to be said to be done. It must be manifestly done. In that when a matter is adjudicated, it should be manifestly done. In that in the eyes of everybody who looks at it, it should be seen that, oh, in this particular case, there is justice. So it's not really my standard, it's the standard of the law.
Every arm of government is said to be independent. And yes, we may not, in practice, we are still independent. Though some persons will try to argue that, oh, the judiciary is not independent because the executive has a role to play in the appointment of its leadership. But it doesn't change the fact that we are still independent.
Welcome to A Place at the Table and to part 3 of our special series. I say the selection at the table consideration on this special is a that is vital, topical, even credible elections, the role of the judiciary. Should I add, for better, for worse? My name is Benga Abora, your moderator for today's very hefty discussions. Without further ado, permit me to yield to those at the table who are set to do the heavy lifting. Welcome, Zuma.
Thank you, Benga. I don't know about lifting. I hope to do my best to break things down. Mark, do you believe there is hope for the credible elections come 2027?
Zuma, hope can be an elusive term. Let's just say we will certainly play our part to ensure the rogues don't openly snatch it, grab it, and run with it. Come, my friend.
It's good to weigh in on a topic very dear. Delivering credible elections in 2027, the jury is out on that one.
Certainly, unless we want to be victims of daylight robbery. All eyes should not just be on the ballot, but on the electorate behind the scenes who bring down the governor long after votes are cast. Welcome, Mr. Yinka.
Thank you, Kinsley. With the formidable men and women at the table today, I'll make bold to say that there will be no daylight robbery on our watch.
Absolutely.
The jury is out. On today's discussion, that's for engagements matter. Our special online panelist for today's discussion is Professor Chidi Odinkalu, who will join us in the course of this conversation. He is especially suited to weigh in on today's topic, not least because he recently published a book titled The Selectorate, When Judges Topple the People. To the table. So, we're looking forward to hearing from you. To our students, you watching on the studio, welcome. All that's left from you that this live broadcast means you can engage in the conversation from wherever you happen to be watching across the world. Simply share your comments in the section under the live stream on YouTube, X, or Instagram, and we will endeavor to read them out in the time we have. So, delivering credible elections, a focus on the selectorate role of the judiciary. Zuma, Madam President, you're on the dock, or at least the seat of judgment, up next after this break.
From the heart of Borno to the shores of Lake Chad, where conflict rages, courage rises, and survival is a daily battle. One voice cuts through the noise.
The battle to maintain peace in the northeast Nigeria continue.
Bringing you the truth from the front lines. Walking the ground scarred by violence, listening to the voices of unsilenced.
It's very terrible. I never prayed for even my enemy to experience such a thing.
Every report a window into resilience. Every story a reminder of hope. I am Umoru Kirawa, reporting where many fear to go and telling the stories that must be heard. NewsCentral fearlessly reporting on what matters most.
There's no shortage of travels fast and onions and fast. Something to say.
No matter how high you are, the law is higher than you.
We have beautiful laws. Enforcing the law is the issue.
How can the country be stable?
If I'm not a good citizen first, I can't be a good leader.
How do you feel?
Sonny, I feel pain.
What we do here creates room for a fuller conversation, featuring leaders, dignitaries, and captains of industry on the questions that don't get enough time. Because real understanding grows when ideas are given space.
The common man still does not have his in court.
What is with Nigeria and politics?
Politics and economics.
What is shaping Nigeria and experience more? Let's puzzle together.
How do we save this country?
You moved from the APC to the PDP.
Therefore, listen, I'm still paying teachers in Ondo State. If Olabode Josh should be expelled from the party.
It's an existential imbecility. Utter nonsense.
Join me, Dapo Adebe, on Nigeria's political 8 p.m. on NewsCentral.
Ready to dialogue entertainment with Take 3.
Catch the latest news and what celebrity is. Let's not forget the exclusive behind-the-scenes access. And
Take 3 shop for all things entertainment. Now I'm talking music, movies, live events, and of course the trending stories.
And delve into the world of entertainment like never before.
For an electrified ultimate sports show where passion meets action.
Witnessed emotions like I've seen today.
Every weekday at 10 p.m. on NewsCentral as we give you the latest
Would you believe it?
analysis and exclusive interviews with your favorite sports personalities. Don't miss out on our special segments with fan interactions, special events, predictions, and surprise guest appearances. This is the place to get your game on. Only on NewsCentral.
We go where the market demands as business, trade, and market analysis are the core of our reports.
Nigerians are beginning to speculate that the price of premium motor spirit might increase.
If it's breaking, we got it. If it affects you, your business, and your pocket, we're on it. We connect the dots of business so you understand what it all means.
It is our hope that the efforts of the federal government to tame inflation yield desired results as soon as possible.
I am Perfect. You're watching NewsCentral.
You're welcome back to the special edition of A Place at the Table. We're talking about delivering credible elections, the selectorate role of the judiciary. I'll hand over to Zuma for advocacy.
Thank you. My first of Nigerian elections was in 1992. I held my aunt to the polling unit and watched people queue behind a desired candidate. I did not know then whether it was a credible or not. I clearly remembered a man, his wife had kid, threatening to from coming home. Since that queuing has given way to the secret ballot. Manual registers have been overtaken by technology. The Electoral Act 2022 and successive institutional reforms have shaped our elections. Yet, and statutes alone do not deliver credibility. Credibility is completely destroyed by the final the sides who actually office. They do not candidates on election day, but they ultimately select which results stand and which are set aside. In a constitutional democracy, the judiciary is not a passive referee. It is an active secretariat with three indispensable duties. Guide the process by ensuring that the electoral rules are followed, protect the timelines and finality by ensuring election petitions are resolved as soon as possible. And lastly, independent arbiter with decisions grounded in evidence and law, not political convenience or external pressure. The man who threatened his wife in 1992 believed the queue itself was the election. Today, we know better. Election is only complete when in the judiciary confirms that the process was free, fair, and in accordance with the law.
Thank you very much. Over to you for deliberations.
I think before we came on air, we were actually having a conversation. Smart raised the question. A good place to talk. If I'm dissatisfied about an election, no matter how credible it is, what should I do? Now, that's not something you want to leave to assumptions. It shows the right to feel like whether the process was credible, and if the process was credible, I still make sure that it is seen to be credible. So I go to court. But there is a dimension I'm just trying to find out, which is going to the tribunal. It has become a means for raising funds, and that blew my head. So if you know that you lost the election, it was credible, but you choose to be mischievous or you intend to raise funds, that has become another means for fundraising. Is that correct? So how do we punish people who, in spite of how credible the election is, proceed to the tribunal, either to raise funds or just to delay the process? That's one. And I have another question, which I also think my panel here and anybody on the audience would like to answer, which is, we still don't have a poster face for electoral malpractice in Nigeria. We still don't have somebody whose face pops up whenever we're talking about a rigged election. Nobody has been punished to date. I was telling Mark that we need that face. So when you go to court to upturn an election and you succeed in not achieving, intention, what should happen to that individual? Should he just go? Should we just withdraw the certificate of return and say, that's enough? Shouldn't that guy go to jail? Maybe the question is back to Inka or Abeze.
I think Abeze wants to go.
Yeah.
Well, maybe I can weigh in two ways here. The first is sort of, if I'm aggrieved, what procedures are available to me? And I think the first really big problem with the electoral system is that there is no access for voters. By design, the election tribunals are limited to candidates or political parties. So if I'm a voter and I say, I turned out to the polling unit and I was intimidated away, or my vote wasn't properly counted, I actually don't have direct recourse from the courts. And even if I did, the argument that my single vote is not determinative of the outcome, so there's basically no venue. We rely on the candidates to kind of be the people that vindicate rights. Then when there's a question, how well set up is the process to go into depth in terms of the factual issues governing the election? We have a process where somebody challenges to front load all the evidence. So rather than as a venue where you can actually discover and pin down a narrative of what happened, it's expected that the challenger kind of does all the investigation by themselves and merely treats the court as a forum for verification rather than discovery.
Okay, so Zuma just gave me a nod to go ahead. I think the big question is really should judges really the ones determine the outcome of who becomes our leaders after voters have decided that they have voted for a particular candidate and then they expect a certain outcome, and when the outcome is not achieved, why are judges interfering with the process and the procedure for choosing our own leaders in terms of the voters? And I think that the reason judges play a big role is largely because every election is guided by laws and rules. And the judges are the ones who then interpret the law in every constitutional democracy or in every system of governance. And therefore, in our own claims, we've got different electoral laws that are guiding the principles of elections, say from the Constitution down to the Electoral Act, and even the electoral guiding principles of INEC, which is always released the rules of engagement for INEC to engage elections, conduct of elections, citizens or political parties, even the candidates. And then we have obviously judicial decisions that have been made in the past now become laws that we can now use. For if both these primary and secondary legislations and policies have been lined up, what it then means is that when people then feel aggrieved to go back to the courts, people that would then interpret these various pieces of legislation, this is where I have a big problem is that if INEC conducts an election and you now conduct an election that did not meet the threshold of a standard, free, credible, and fair elections, why do I need to be the one to provide the burden of proof in that election? Why is the burden shifting on me who does not have the capacity, who didn't conduct an election? So, for example, a guy is or something, why is the caregiver not providing evidence to show that they did their best and the child still died? It's just like taking a patient to the hospital and then there is negligence. So what I'm therefore saying is that as judges begin to decide this, they need to come up with, since the national definitely or has not been able to provide that shifting of burden. And for our viewers who don't understand this burden, is essentially saying that I have come to you and this is all I have done. So prove to me that I have done everything humanly possible for me in this election, that I've played all my parts. And so you have to be the one to prove. So the candidates and the political parties are the ones that need to prove that INEC conducted a free and fair election. And it doesn't sound logically right, because INEC needs to prove that the burden, the rights they have gotten over the years to conduct a free and fair elections, that they fulfilled all those rights, they fulfilled all the requirements that they needed to fulfill for an election to be credible and peaceful. So in this conversation, what I am really looking out for is the fact that I hope that judges can make pronouncements using the 2027 elections if the elections go to court. Because one of the biggest issues is that when elections are not free and credible, people will go to court. And we keep shouting that why are people going to court to seek interpretation of what has happened? But INEC needs to, conduct a free and fair elections to reduce the number of parties to go to court.
Thank you. INEC needs to step up their game. Yinka, over to you.
The interesting thing is there is an assumption of credibility to the elections when you get to court. So, yeah. So the court assumes that INEC organized a credible election. That is the burden of proof to every candidate. And I think it's the candidate is a petitioner now, not the party. Is it the party? Or so the burden of proof really is on the petitioner to prove that the election was not credible. So essentially, you are fighting the other party, you're also fighting INEC. And the burden of proof increases from the level of which position you are contesting for. So if you are contesting for House of Reps, it's at state level lower. But if you're contesting for, then you have to prove that burden at the PU to PU level. All right. So you're looking at 179,000 PUs, and that's where this challenge comes from. And so when I look at the topic, and delivering credible elections, the selectorate role of the judiciary, sometimes I wonder, are we being fair to the judiciary here? Are they corrupt judges anywhere in the world? Yes. The answer is yes. But when you get to that level where the elections are not credible, what do you expect the judiciary to do? They are going to come in, they are going to apply the rules, and the rules of evidence is that if you want to be able to show that this election was not credible, you have to show that proof at PU level. So it behoves us into this conversation to have a very intentional conversation, not sentimental conversation. A lot of it the reality is that look at, I'm sure Amaze will come and give us the data at some point. When you look at the data in terms of the total number of petitions that we have had to run since 1999, and the total number of those petitions that were successful, I'm pretty sure that over 90% of those petitions were not successful. Yeah. So if you're looking at probably 10% or less successful petitions, how can you say that the judiciary itself was selecting? So they have to do a job. They've done their job. Are there corrupt people among them? Yes. The point comes down to the fact that we have to make sure that we do everything within our capacity to deliver a credible election. And that part of the process must be that on the technical part of it, in terms of the parties, because a lot of election petitions, how do they feel? The party issues, the some of the burden of proof issues, and a lot of all the technical challenges. If we are able to solve a lot of those problems, maybe we'll give the judiciary less work to do, and probably we won't be tagging them.
So for me, I think this conversation around this electorate is actually important, because what it means is that there are like 4 or 5 candidates in an election, and the judiciary must select who won somebody. So that's where I guess the conversation around selectorate
really doesn't have to come to the judiciary, but we'll get to that shortly. Thank you very much, our distinguished panelist. Let's now head to Professor Chidi Odinkalu, the former chairman of the Nigerian Human Rights Commission. INEC is set to spend almost R1 trillion next year conducting elections, and many people have complained about the judicialization of Nigeria's democracy. INEC should be announcing winners and not the judiciary. Prof, delivering credible elections has to be a realistic goal, or else there's little point in the elections, right? Professor Odinkalu, what are your thoughts?
No, thank you, Yinka, and good day to the colleagues and everyone there. I'm sorry, I have an aversion for tables, which is why I was not invited to the table. So I can try and have my from here very quickly. Well, I could easily just listen to the conversation without trying to intrude on it, because it's very organic and it's very enlightening. But maybe I should just remind us, and apart from the defensiveness of Yinka, but I'll get to that in a moment. We've had presidentialism in Nigeria since 1979. Is the court. And it's interesting that Zuma's introduction talks about elections being decided by the final institution, which is an independent judiciary. So we have two assumptions here. One is that the final decider is not the electoral umpire, but the courts. And the second is the assumption that the judiciary is independent. But the fact is that those two assumptions do not coexist. You make the judiciary the decider, you make competition in the judiciary, and you increase the political salience of the judiciary, and therefore you reduce the likelihood that the judiciary will be independent. I think it's important to understand that logic. Now, we'll get back to the history. 1979, 12 2/3 is what most people will remember, Awolowo and Shagari. People don't remember the elections and what happened. They remember 12 2/3. What many people will not remember is that after the coup of 1983, General Buhari set up the Babalaki Commission. A chunk of the Babalaki Commission report was devoted to election petitions and judicial corruption in election petitions. Justice Babalaki was a judge, and he ended up in the Supreme Court. So this is not me inventing things like Yinka is talking about sentimentality, right? Now we go to and actually when you read the report, they do say, they just stop short of saying the process of electoral dispute resolution was quite substantially corrupted, even then. By the time we get to 1992, and the Lakba Kinsanya, who ruled the ING unlawful. You get to the system since then. And responding to Yinka's point, in 2007, 86.35% of all the positions run ended up in the courts. Now, I hear your point, were they successful, were they not successful? Success is in the eyes of the beholder. Okay? Now, in 2003, Ugochukwu ended up in the Supreme Court on the basis, in the Senate on the basis of a judgment bought with 27 million naira, bribing two judges, Okuchukwu and David at the Court of Appeal. 2008, we have lots of other cases. Justice Naron was suborned by a senior advocate of Nigeria. It's not necessary to mention the person's name, but Naron was fired. The senior advocate was found responsible by the LPDC, ultimately set aside by the Supreme Court on technicality, so they could not even get into the substance of the matter. Right? Now, I could go on with several cases of judges, who demanded 200 million and more, and all of this was found by the National Judicial Council, so I'm not trying to make up things here. And what is the point here? In the last elections, about 82.1% of the cases of the offices run ended up in the courts. So there are 5 things very quickly. Number 1, if you have that quantity of cases, offices to run ending up in the courts, you're in trouble. The people are no longer deciding elections. Number 2, the question of burden. In the civil law countries, the Electoral Commission has the first responsibility to prove that they have complied with the rules. There's a certification process before the burden shifts. In Nigeria, that certification and proof does not take place. And the Uwais Commission, Uwais panel, advised in 2008 that that process of certification should be interposed. Number 3, before the burden shifts. Number 3, reliefs. Courts can police the rules without necessarily becoming the deciders. In Kenya, in 2017, the court ruled that the election was flawed. They did not decide. They sent it back to the people. In Malawi, in 2020, they ruled the presidential election was flawed. They sent it back to the people. In Nigeria, that no longer happens. They just decide. Number 4, and I will end on this note. Number 4, the question is who should be taking that decision. That decision has now been taken by the people and is being corrupted by the politicians. And I do think that is something that should concern us. Can I?
Thank you so much for your contribution, Professor Odingalu. A lot of food thought while we on what's been said now here from our studio audience. Let's keep the questions and commentary really short, simple, succinct. Also have the pleasure of having joining us today in this discussion, Mr. Dakuku Peters. I believe you have to make the issue of. Let's hand the microphone at the hip.
Is it true that politicians use the tribunals to raise funds after the election?
All right, thank you, Benga, and thank you, all the panelists. I hope I'm audible enough.
Yeah.
I'd like to establish 3 things as my own introductory remarks. The first is that I do not know of any democracy. The judiciary does not have a role in the electoral process. That's 1. Now, 2, in every contestation for power, there will always be disputes. And that is settled. 3 is that role for the judiciary. However, the concern period is the judiciary carrying out that role as envisaged in the Constitution. And in examining that, we must acknowledge that there is a technical dimension of it and a perception dimension of it. The perception among Nigerians is that the judiciary has turned itself to the electorate. That is why the term judicial electorate is very much popular or relatable in Nigeria. A specific question: is it in fact true that politicians use the electoral tribunal process to raise money? The answer is in the affirmative. It is one dimension of it. However, you also recall that I was a victim of the judicial process in 2015 elections when I ran for governorship of Rivers State. After the elections, as you are aware, election is a process. It's not just the voting day event. Starting from the nomination of candidates, proceeding to the independent election, the process of casting ballot, counting, announcing results, and defending At the end of the election, I approached the court. And by the way, the party can approach the court and the candidate can approach the court, not just the candidate alone. I approached the court. The court of first instance ruled that the elections did not comply with the rules and the nullified elections. Adverse to the court of appeal. So, and the Supreme Court on technical grounds distinguish this. Not on the way evidence or justice itself, on technical grounds, the Supreme Court ruled that the reader was not provided for in the act. It was only part of the regulations of INEC. I'd like us to understand that difference. That the card reader, it was the first time accreditation process was done via technology. The Supreme Court ruled that the card reader was not provided for. That was the core of the matter. Was not provided for in the Electoral Act. And the distinguishing feature of that election is that the number of voters accredited by the card reader was substantially lower than the results declared, the number of voters declared. In fact, the INEC declared that over 1 million persons voted, whereas the card reader showed that it was less than 200,000 persons that voted.
So, Mr. Peterside, have we improved on the electoral process, looking at the current act? Has that been?
A lot has changed. However, substantial work to be done, starting from pre-election disputes, intra-party conflict. How do we resolve those? Now, two is the fact that in terms of evidentiary provisions, it is still what it is. It is the candidate and the party that must prove that the election was not conducted in substantial compliance with the electoral law or the constitution. That, I think, must change. Even going further, today with technology, the courts do recognize a lot of provisions in dealing issues of the issue of disputes. That also must change. We must be very precise about the evidentiary reforms that needs to be done so that technology will be acknowledged, accepted, and relied upon instead of waiting for individuals to come from 176 or 179,000 polling units. It is almost impossible to overturn an election, no matter how defective it is. It can be. Now, aside from that, reforms that need to be in place before we can say with some certainty that it is the will of the electorate that is being protected by the judiciary, and not that the judiciary now is the alternate electoral commission, and in fact, it is now the selectorate. That role should be left to the Nigerian electorate. They should decide who governs them, not INEC and not the judiciary.
Thank you so much, Mr. Peterside. Years of uninterrupted democracy referred to as a democracy. After all, Rome wasn't built the same day. Rome was built in the same day. Would have hired the same contractors. I believe we still have questions. Room for one more question from our audience members. Please, simple, short, and simple. Thank you. Introduce yourself and go ahead. I think your mic is.
Thank you very much. I think it is very important for us to have at the back of our mind the essence of this conversation. And all of this is supposed to be about the people. That is the first thing I want us to put into consideration. Democracy is about the people. Look at the definition of democracy: the government of the people, by the people, and for the people. So the electorate impact in every election is very, very important. But the moment elections are being perfected, conversations around electorate die automatically. You begin to hear the candidate and the party. So I think part of the reforms that we should begin to look at is how do we begin to bring the electorate even in electionary disputes, right? So that's the first thing I think it is important for us to do, because for as long as the final decision is no longer decision of the people, and I can technically tell you that is no longer democracy, right? So we are now beginning to look at it that, oh, democracy is now the government of the people, by the people, right? But made by the judiciary. So if we are looking at it that way, then democracy, the definition of democracy is no longer sustainable. So I think that is one thing. Then the second thing that's also very, very important is, you see, when we talk about credibility in election, credibility is relative, whether you like it or not. So a winner would describe credibility as being, oh, it's credible, technically, right? And to a loser, it is so it's subjective. So it is not credible, right? So depending on which part you are, that is that the debate for which you now define what credibility is all about. In conclusion, it is very, very important for us to know that people are very, very important. Traits are very, very important. Usually they have their own roles to play, there's no doubt, especially when it comes to dispute resolution and all of that. The ultimate decision is what I'm looking at that. The decision should be take it back and let the people eventually decide on whatever they want.
The audience has spoken. It's now time for us to look at what the data is saying. You're welcome back to the special edition of A Place at the Table Live. Delivering credible elections is a product of working in the time we. Here's someone who can put this equation in perspective for us. Let's tap into the reservoir of knowledge from our partners and experts in data analysis, Visuals, to ground us on the facts and figures before we kick off the second half.
From the hills of the Southeast Africa, reporting coverage on the ground, exclusive reports, and the latest news, all right here. We speak to the people live, get their perspectives on the latest news, the happenings, and the trends. I am Bongani Sisiba from Johannesburg, South Africa. This is News Central.
But understanding is rare. Where conversations move fast, but truth is often left behind.
You are enough. I tell people you're worthy of confidence, you're powerful.
So, we created a place where voices are heard, not rushed, where stories are told and not judged. This is a safe space for honest conversations for real people. From love and family and leadership, culture and conversations that are told those living them.
Across Nigeria's 774 local government areas, promises were made, but how many have been kept? From the village chiefdoms to council secretariats, a new conversation is unfolding. One that's powered by people, driven by data, and unwilling to accept
This
silence.
particular government, they are not doing anything.
Is your council fixing roads? Just within statements? Are you guys buying change? Actions we track without and we go to the people who live through them. From abandoned projects to overlooked triumphs, this is Reported with Purpose. Every Sunday at 7:30 p.m., Scorecard pulls back the curtain on grassroots government. Because democracy doesn't stop in Abuja, it starts at your doorstep. Scorecard, only on News Central.
The real story is not always in the headlines. It lives in everyday conversations.
Don't have water in the community. Inside the community, we don't have the road.
Women, we are not educated here.
I have 3 children at home. To feed my family now has become a problem.
This is News Central, empowering our viewers to shape the future of their communities.
Words have power. They build worlds, challenge truths, and capture the soul of a continent. African voices are rewriting the stories of who we are. From Lagos to Nairobi, Johannesburg to Accra.
I grew up with the sort of sense of assurance about my place in the world. I didn't question whether or not I needed to have a voice. I had one.
Welcome to Literati, the home for words that move, stories that matter, and authors who dare to imagine. Every week, we sit down with brilliant minds shaping Africa's literary landscape. News Central.
As the world winds down, the truth is just beginning to unfold. Stories tonight. ICRCP mourns rising spate of kidnapping in Nigeria's north. We need electoral reforms. Join us tonight bring well to your screen and decisive reports. Out on News Central, every story counts.
Where the market banks as business, trade and market analysis are the core of our reports.
Nigerian cabinet to speculate that the price of premium motor spirit might increase.
If it's breaking, we got it. If it affects you, your business and it. Well, we can only do business so you understand what it all means. I am Perpetua Fasamipita. You're watching News Central.
I do not think we should see the act of the judiciary as being selectorate. Rather, I think we should see the responsibility of the judiciary as adjudicatory. So maybe the problem, as I see it essentially, is not about the courts. It's not about the judiciary. So there is religious of Nigerian politicians who will ordinarily, we want to fight any matter to finish. And so, coming to court, the court will accept their complaints, listen to them, and determine the cases one way or the other. So I don't really think we should blame the courts, for performing their duties, in a way. If there are no cases brought before courts, judges will have no case to entertain. And of course, there is the systemic problem too of not securing credible elections. If elections are transparently, credible, if you contest an election and you have lost fairly, again, Osun example is available. There will be no need to go to court.
As the retired Chief Judge of Kogi State said, if you've won fairly and squarely, there will be no need to go. But let's hear from the sentiment and hear what the experts have to say about the numbers. After all, they say numbers don't lie. We'll go to IK from Visas to tell us what the data says when it comes to credibility of elections. Over to you, IK.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon to everyone at the panel. Indeed, like you said, Benga, data does not lie. The panel has given us the argument. What I want to just throw in some numbers. Each one addressing a question that every Nigerian voter deserves an answer to. Let's start with the most important one. In 2023, nearly 2,000 petitions were filed. That's after the 2023 election. Now, 895 of these cases were analyzed, and these cases went somewhere. This is what makes this 9 out of 10 very significant. They didn't go anywhere purely and simply because there was, not necessarily because the cases didn't have merit, but because of technicalities. So they failed because the procedural requirements to prove that an election was rigged are so demanding that evidence alone is often not enough. The petition system is not necessarily broken. It's just designed to be very hard to win. Second, since 1999, Nigeria has conducted 7 presidential elections. From 1999 to date, none of these presidential elections obviously has been overturned. However, within this same time period, 7 governorship results were overturned. It's like Anambra, Kogi, Edo, Imo, Osun, and Ekiti. Now, the courts have successfully overturned 7 of these cases, so we know that the courts can overturn election results. In the 2023 cycle alone, the courts ousted 12 House of Reps members and 5 senators. The data does not tell us why the same standard has never reached a presidential ballot, even if in 2007, the courts said that there were substantial infractions, but these infractions were not substantial enough to overturn results. This sort of sets out a pattern that the higher the office, the lower the probability of judicial intervention. The third is about confidence. Afrobarometer African Research Network, its most recent survey across 38 countries between 2024 and 2025, interviewing about 1,000 people. And for Nigeria, 1 in 4 ordinary citizens trust judicial. This places third from bottom amongst 38 African countries studied. Also, this study showed that only 28% of ordinary citizens trust that they can get justice. Again, third lowest in the continent. In 2024, the Chief Justice herself, the Chief Justice of Nigeria, herself acknowledged the problem, warning that Nigerians would continue to lose faith in the judiciary unless the institution addressed its own delays. In that conversation, she cited about 243 cases in superior courts. This institution, which is the judiciary that delivers the final verdict on Nigeria's election, commands the trust of just 1 in 4 Nigerians. Just think about that. 3 facts have been placed right in front of our viewers. 9 no result has been overturned, and only in 4 Nigerians the courts that decide both. Think about it this way. Ballot box opens the process, but the courtroom closes it. Data say Nigerians trust what happens in between this opening and closing of votes. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Mike. If you've not had lunch, this is so much to chew on. Food for thought. 1 in 4 Nigerians, the data is very scary. Thank you. Now there's a QR code that will be displayed on the screen for our live poll. So eyes on the screen for our studio audience. Please scan and cast your vote on the issue that matters to all of us. Now, whilst we digest the information we've been given, let's go on a quick break. I call it halftime. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
NewsCentral Town Hall series brings you face-to-face with the people at the center of critical conversations.
When the shooting started where they killed the military, we lost 8 persons here in the farmer community.
For 5 minutes, our building collapsed before the building that cast fire.
The building where daddy gives to me, everything done.
Women and children are suffering, nowhere to sleep, because notice was not given before the house was demolished.
It's a it doesn't need to start this minute, this moment.
For us as diaspora, the things that we think to my colleagues around here, succession plan, there must be youth engagement in the diaspora.
The moment the middle class of any society begin to worry about the price of food, it's over.
Thank you, NewsCentral, for putting the
We go straight to hard issues to engage leaders, experts, and representatives and other stakeholders for variable solutions.
We are suffering, we are hungry. No money to buy anything.
Please, I plead the government for assistance to help us.
The battle that we are at right now is a battle that is between the rich and the poor.
You know for a fact that there will be people who are out, but yet those are the voices that you should listen to.
We really have to compensate for in writing the conversation. The Central Town Hall, we're here to listen, to learn, and to take action together.
killing their people, many of them trying to salvage what they can salvage.
Members of the Nigerian police force to alert the protesters that they've gone past their time.
They came out with reinforcement, basically. All right, at the moment, 2 roll on now.
For electoral matters, you have 21 days to. That means if judgment is given to the is declared to be from its on a weekend, so it starts counting on the weekdays. You understand? You have 21 days to prepare and file, and whatever you are able to gather within that 21 days is what you are going to file in court. That's one of the reasons that some election cases crumble, because if you're unable to gather sufficient evidence within that 21 days, your case is gone.
In Kenya, yes, the Supreme Court judge upturned an election that declared a sitting president winner of election. Not as a mischief, but based on facts before him, he will not win the election.
So apart from resolving electoral disputes, the court makes policy statements, which in turn, or judicial make policy statements, which in turn shapes our judicial, shapes our electoral process, and also our generality of our existence as this country.
You're welcome back to the special broadcast over at the table. Elections, the selectorate role of the judiciary. Before we start off the second half, just a quick announcement that we've done a quick substitution. Yes, thank you so much, Mr. Yinka Ogunubi, and we're bringing in Mr. Dakoku Peterside. Still so much to unpack, so many issues that lie at the heart of all of us with regard to delivering credible elections in Nigeria. So let's see if we have a few comments, or we'll come back to that later. But let me just hand over to Kingsley. What will you be laying on this table for us this afternoon?
Thank you, Bega. On August 15th, 2026, the people of Osun State declared him the winner of that election. Certificate of return was issued. Campaign stopped. And which is delivered. I'm sure you all know. Nigerians, we also know the election is quite over yet. Another electorate. Campaign, ballot papers, a repetition, evidence. Sometimes where the people's decision survives. Welcome to Nigeria's judicial electorate. Since 1999, Nigerians have gone to the polls 7 times and produced an astonishing litigation industry. I think that's quite an industry. One academic data set puts the number of election petitions at 7,000. 574 in 2003, 1,291 in 2007. In 2011, we had 732, 611 in 2015, and 1,697 in 2019. And of course, in 2023, we had in 2019, both in 2011 and 2015 were during Professor Atahiru Jega's tenure. He was late President Yar'Adua's joker for addressing the 2011 sham we called an election. Jega did some cleansing based on available data, or so it seems. But Professor Mahmood Yakubu took us back to the dark days. Will Tinubu and Professor Josh Amupiton end this demonic democratic ritual where citizens, politicians, INEC, the class, tribunals, and appellate judges have the last word? I doubt it. Could this explain why Governor Adeleke's curious haste to Asorok a few days after defeating the APC in Osun? Was it political courtesy? Adeleke may have won at the polls, but he also knows that between victory and permanence lies a battlefield. That is our tragedy. A democracy in which politicians prepared not just to win votes, but to win judges has become a democracy with two electorates. The solution is not to abolish the judiciary. It is to take it as a substitute for credible elections. Transparent result transmission, auditable electronic records, independent administration, prosecution of moral offenders, judges isolated from political patronage. The ballot box must become the final arbiter again, not merely the opening act.
Wow, interesting choice of words there, Kingsley. Demonic democracy. I wonder if the gentleman and the panel agree or disagree. The floor is yours. Happy deliberations.
Well, Mr. Peterside has been a victim of this demonic process. Maybe he should take the first shot.
All right, thank you very much. View elections as rituals and not an authentic process of electing leaders that represent the sovereign will of Nigerian people. And forward, like I said, clearly so that election is a process. With their legal elections, who makes the legal framework? The politicians who are members of the assembly. And the party dominates. They determine candidates will be nominated. How votes will and to that extent, the National Assembly plays a critical role in
electoral law, sir.
The electoral process. You leave the National Assembly, you move over to the independent umpire, in our case, INEC. INEC rests on its mandate on the laws that govern the electoral process. That's another challenge. Is INEC truly independent? INEC free from is put in place transparent, command the respect of Nigerians. Is it credible? Is the process? Will it throw up a free and fair election? There are a lot of questions on the conduct of INEC. You move from INEC, now the political parties. Unfortunately, the way the parties are structured in Nigeria leaves so much to be desired. We have a challenge. As we complain about the role of the judiciary, we must also begin to complain about the role of the political parties. Now, if you look at the cases that come before the judiciary to determine, most of the cases are what you can classify as nomination process. The parties have constitutions are following constitutions. If the parties do what is right, it will also reduce the burden on the judiciary. It will reduce the tendency of the judiciaries to play the role of the selectorate. You leave the parties. Now you go on to what happens on election day. When you line up and you get accredited, to when you cast your ballot, to when it is counted, and what happens between the polling booth, where you cast your vote, to the ward, where the first level of coalition is done, to the LGA, state, and what happens between when you cast your vote and the final outcome. In 2023 election is that between the polling units and the final outcome, we experience a lot of Nigerian terms.
I have a question that I would love.
Again, on the of the judiciary, when cases come before them, their role in liberal democracy or constitutional democracy is unavoidable. When cases come before them, there are two concerns. One is the fact that there is a lot of weight on evidence. There is a lot of inconsistency in judicial reasoning. That's what the complaint is all about. Okay. And the second complaint is the uncertainty in the application of judicial precedent. We see
I can take your question and then I'll comment.
I'm not sure you can answer this question.
Please go ahead.
You know, there's this thing about defending your vote. It's only in Nigeria that people defend their vote. I've never heard about people defending their votes as well.
I can explain that.
So, point of sort of votes where people imply the burden is on
like a physical defending.
Yeah, the burden is on the voters to sort of turn up to the collation centers, make sure that the results aren't manipulated. I think again, it's a function of how difficult we have made it in some instances to kind of be able to trace the electoral process to the final declaration. Granted, was supposed to be created the IREP system where the idea was we'll be able to see the result of the polling unit, and then you can collate at each level to ensure that all of the figures tally. But when INEC did not fully upload all the results, that's the effect that you see. You wouldn't necessarily need to have that physical contestation if people at home look at all the results. And the point I want to pick things from Professor Kalu and from Peter's side, in that I feel we've focused a lot on the rate of filing, just how many cases go to court. And I actually think there are better metrics for us to focus on that bring in other actors. First is, how many cases are resolved on the merits as opposed to on cases from court because people are buying out time or lack of standing. The court is engaging deeply in actual factual evidence. That would be the first thing. Second would be, what are the default remedies? Professor Odinkalu kind of presented this picture of, picking and choosing who the winner will be. In the 2023 election, old electoral, there were two directly substitute down. The first that somebody didn't win a lawful majority of votes. This is the board of Senator Natasha into current office because she was able to show essentially that the figures did not tally with what they were seeing at the EC8 form. So that, I sort of think it's fair to put the runner-up in if you can show that it really comes down to a calculation error. The more controversial instance is when we find, for example, the declared winner is not trying to take office. And what is, this person isn't qualified, so we're discarding their votes and we're just going to the runner-up. But then the question becomes, what happens to the tens of thousands or potentially even millions of people who will have voted for this candidate? And so I think we should consider more having the default remedy be to have a rerun as opposed to declaring a new person in that instance. The third is on kind of relative trust in the judiciary and acceptance of the results. we've made much mention about only 25% of Nigerians having trust in the courts, but I want to give you some other figures from the same Afrobarometer. Only 22% have trust in the opposition, only 19%, only 18%, and only 16% INEC. While the courts are necessarily faring well, they of office, and it takes this sort of scenario.
You want to jump in?
Yes, thank you for sharing the last data you shared, Amazing. I will be writing on what Professor Odekalu said also, as the court not being the decider. But the court can't say this is flawed, but not necessarily decide what the final winner is going to be. I like the fact what we see that is wrong with the process. Every time who stress tested? How did you get it? How did you decide this is how we want to run it? And I like the fact that we are embracing technology in our electoral process, but the reality is we cannot fully leverage technology as far as we still have a lot of digital penetration gap and the quality of connectivity we have. We are a country that is still a large part of Nigeria don't even have electricity. We don't have, not to talk of internet. So if you're saying we want electoral results to be transmitted real time, how? So those are the issues we need to address beyond actual electoral process. It's an infrastructural issue at the core. But yes, I totally agree. Technology will significantly improve our electoral outcomes. Thank you.
Matt, you were in Osun State, and you launched your platform, I Report INEC, to basically track this result. How moved the needle forward?
So I think that Osun State is a different ballgame compared to Ondo and the previous. Actually, since Tinubu became president, it's a totally different ball game. It's because the citizens were very interested in being involved in the process, and they knew that up against a bigger force, that was going to swallow them up. And there was no voter. So the voter was not that high, but there were more people came out and trooped to vote. And in terms of the use of technology, I've read a lot of reports, because when we wanted to launch our app in Osun to monitor the election results, we were told that they had not, up to 50% at all. But because of the level of interest that we saw, people were very much interested in participating, and then also tried to know how they can use most of these apps. And that level of pressure also pushed INEC to ensure that they transmitted results electronically on time. However, even when there was that break in transmission to say, okay, for 2-3 hours, the results were no longer coming in, if you were observing from own results that the incumbent governor was going to win the election, and there was no way 27 polling units were going to overturn what had happened in 3,000 polling units. So for Nigeria, I think the most important thing is for them to come out. And the question of as to whether they are voting, it is quite important that different countries, for example, is coming to say their projections. So that's defending the vote. In Nigeria, we want to. I'm not the one defending the votes. No other person can protect the
votes. And the use of technology, like organization, is it a form of defending one's vote, like Zuma suggested?
Absolutely. Yeah. The use of technology basically cuts out the declaration of results from the and to the state sector. Bring in technology like the use of IREP or even iReport INEC, you break that, and then you give people real-time opportunity to see results, and also reduce the level of judicial cases that they're losing or winning. for you to go to court. Basically challenge the process like it is now. I'm not sure APC in Osun State will be willing to go to court to challenge that process because it was clear and glaring. You know, results were coming in real time and people who were extracting and mining data could tell. On our own platform, for example, 100% of the results that we got tallied with what INEC got. And so there was no reason for us to cry foul like we did cry during the Edo governorship election.
I really wish we had time, but we have to move to Professor Odin Kalu, who's on standby. The ballot box must become the final arbiter again, and not merely the opening act. How do we justice to this challenge? Sure that, you know, INEC declares the winners and we don't end up running to the judiciary.
Thanks a lot. By the way, I think I should probably not say that and what she's doing. I'm interested in acting judgments or decisions on data. I think you should go to the website elections.org. I suspect it probably has something to do with that. Collects decisions on election petitions in Nigeria across the board. One of the things here, you know, Nigeria suffers from mentality. There are only two countries in Africa, Nigeria and the others. And I think it may be useful to look at other places. By the way, there's just a point I need to update from Kingsley talking about President Yar'Adua suggesting actually that President Yar'Adua appointed Professor Jega. He was appointed by President Jonathan 10 months before the 2011 election. I think if there is any credit there, it's important to say that it should go to President Jonathan. But can I just say this? I think it may be useful to look at other African countries and what happens. And secondly, when we look at this data of what's successful and what's not successful, it does not reflect fully what's happened, which arises from the conflation of pre-election petitions with post-election arbitration or dispute resolution. In 2019, the Supreme Court set aside elections and votes in Zamfara State and declared a man who got less than 25% of the votes winner in the governorship elections, claiming that the votes that had been cast for the APC in Zamfara State were wasted votes. Wasted votes. This is the jurisprudence in what's supposed to be democracy. The votes cast by citizens are wasted on account of pre-election. But you know, I think stuff. It was not in the ballot in 2007. Pre-election, right? I want to factor those issues in. Secondly, these have changed incentive systems, incentive mechanisms in this election dispute resolution system has changed incentive mechanisms in judicial governance. It used to be that governorship election petition because the court was getting more attention and they struck down that amendment, and so that appeals could get to the Supreme Court. I think it's important for us to understand the implications of some of the opportunity to strike down the constitution in Uganda. The Supreme Court of election in Uganda back to the people. There was an intervention by the president who was the accuser, and overnight, Supreme Court Justice Judge Kanyehamba, who was Museveni's Attorney General, eventually told this story before he died. Okay? In Ghana, in 2013, the Supreme Court of Ghana declared President Mahama winner by a 6-3 verdict. The following day, they released a press statement saying for when they released lost the petition, but he was installed. What I am saying is we need to actually be a lot more careful and dutiful and detailed about how we read judicial intervention. And I do not think the statistics at all get close to the story. This is a narrative issue. This is an issue of institutional behavior and not an issue of statistics alone. And on the question of how do we try to address it very finally, my view is a democracy has a logic to it. The people decide. And when they decide, and when they have the opportunity to do so, it preserves the incentive, which is if you perform, you get money from you. If you don't perform, you lose that mandate. What the problem is here is the interposition of the judiciary takes away that logic, and it actually makes selectocracy a crime against democracy. Can I yield? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Odinkalu, for your fantastic insights on the subject matter. Now is where we open the conversation to our students and to you, our viewers. Please keep your questions, comments, and your name, sir.
Kowipoga. My comment or question is there any way we can conduct election without taking the problem to the judiciary? Let us narrow that to our home, because I look at judiciary as the castle of chiefs in the village. Now we take the INEC and the electorate as the husband and wife. Now you want your home to be in a perfect situation. Now you didn't provide what the woman need to work with. And the idea you take you expect the castle of chiefs to but that's not possible. Now, why don't you tell us what an ordinary man can? This election is credible. I have mentioned elections for a long time. Now, even at the polling booth, there's always a fight between parties. If we have a clear, what do you call it, framework that with this election will be credible, I don't think the judiciary will do to play.
Should conduct the decide.
Even this election is credible. Now, because of a lot of that was why is credible. If we take to the public that even from your polling booth, you let us know what is happening there. Then whereby there will be a central house that will collect all this, I think judiciary will not have much to say, because there is no way that judiciary will not do their job. Because where you make your defense, you maybe then somebody has to go for it and you get the result. So can't we focus on INEC to do more job than the judiciary? I think with that we're able to have a credible election.
So we'll take. I think we can quickly answer your question before we take the next feedback from the audience. Who wants to attempt his question? Do we need a template?
What I have is another question.
Okay.
And I was asking Mark here, can the Osun election be contested in court? Yes. Do you think the APC will contest that election? Somebody is...
my name is Prayer Oko. Let me just go straight to your question. I will answer your question by rating the use of the judiciary in a process. Right? After the I want to use is right. We an individual or persons who can hear from party A, hear from party B, and say, okay, this is what it is. And from what you people put before us, this is what we think is right, or this is what we think happened. And that is exactly what the judiciary is supposed to be in issues of election disputes, right? So coming back to your question, can the APC Osun State contest the election? And I will say 100% yes. As a lawyer, we encourage, instead of going back.
For what reasons?
That's what I'm going. Instead of going back to fight with whatever machineries is before them, getting to put laws into their hands, bring your grievances to the courts. The Constitution have empowered the judiciary to determine your grievances. Instead of them going to protest or hiring their side of the town to fight with the other touts of the declared winner, bring your grievance. So if the APC feel they are not comfortable with, come to the courts.
Those grievances to you, you collect legal.
And that is why I was coming back to my own view to say that we need reform.
Can we take one more question?
We need serious reform
from the members of the order.
Okay.
Thank you very much. My name is David Ngwoke. I don't know why I continue to feel that INEC does not have what it takes to conduct a credible election. I'm saying so because if something must be credible, the person must be unbiased. And then if INEC is not unbiased, let us go to the history of how they come about. Who is INEC? Who appoints chairman of INEC? The president. Who is the president? What is on the system? The president has interest in political appointing somebody to be a chairman of something. Imagine my father appointing me a football match is going to play to be the even from the World Cup we play, we see people doing the referee. They are from different countries. The president has appointed INEC, and now the laws that were they're made by the National Assembly are also beneficiaries of a rigged system. My contest or my question goes to Mr. Peter side. Is INEC capable of conducting a credible election if we must continue to build on the current reality?
Okay, we'll take that answer outside of this and the conversation continues online. Fantastic question, by the way, and it's the Constitution. Amend that section. There's no time for us to catch up with our list of visas. Over to you.
Oh, thank you very much, Binga. Throughout today's program, we asked our viewers across our different platforms some simple questions, and here's what it is. First question: How much do you trust Nigerian courts to deliver justice in elections? And almost everyone felt like they don't trust the Nigerian courts to deliver justice in an election dispute. Secondly, we ask, do you believe Nigerian judges who handle election cases are free from political pressure? And over half of the respondents said no, they do not believe, while just about 38% said that they believe partially. We also asked if your preferred candidate lost in an election you believed was rigged, would you go to court? And over 61% says no, that they don't trust the courts to be fair. And finally, do you believe Nigeria can conduct credible election in 2027? An election whose result you would accept? And 46% said no, that they believe the system is compromised. Shockingly, about 30% said they are not planning to vote in 2027. So these are the responses from our. Please continue to and respond. Fill the survey. Thank you very much.
Interesting data set there. Thank you so much. I thank you for setting the context for us. Time for some final statements from our panel. We'll start from left to right. Zura.
Elections come every 4 years. But what happened on the election day, the tone is set years before. So for us to have better election outcomes, also process, we all have to engage. We means you and I. We all have to engage beyond the election day. Thank you.
Mr. Peterson.
All right, thank you. I will just give my statement, but it would be nice for me to respond to the question of the two last speakers, because the questions speak to the same issue. Can INEC conduct free and fair election? 3 or 4 principal things need to be in place. One is that we need to look at the legal framework again. The legal framework is as important as the process. Now, if INEC can put in place a secure, transparent procedure for casting your vote, counting the vote, transmitting the vote, and finally announcing the winner, that will enhance the confidence of Nigeria. The challenge right is Nigerians, it will be counted and it will be properly transmitted. There's a challenge with transmission of results. Now, and the final concern of Nigerians is respect for the will of the people, respect for the vote. It's not about counting alone. Do we respect the we cannot, in reality, eliminate the role of the judiciary in the electoral. Mind you, it is a process. I think the challenge is that we need to reform the way the judiciary plays its role. Listening to Professor Dinkalu, there are models from other places. In Kenya, they have the Constitutional Court. I think it's the South Africa Constitutional Court, where you have a committee of justices and non-justices. And their role is principally to review the work of the Electoral Commission. And when they carry out their review, if it doesn't meet certain threshold, they send it back to the people. The people decide, not to decide that look, you elected or you're not elected. If they cannot qualify, then they are for a fresh election. That's key for the decide. Let the INEC remain an impartial. Let people be the final. Whether this meets constitutional requirements. Thank you very much.
Over to you, Amisi.
Thank you very much. So, three very quick points. We need to focus primarily on making malpractice difficult to commit before the fact rather than trying to punish it after. There, I think this data transparency is really the key thing. Professor Odinkalu kindly pointed out that I, along with a team of other researchers, are compiling information about the elections at this NigerianElectionPetitions.org. There's also iReport, there's Idoncast, so I think many people are involved in this space. The second is that I actually think an underrated source of legal reform is not necessarily in the Electoral Act, but in the Evidence Act.
Yes.
Because we've not fully incorporated some of these new electronic technologies into voting and made clear how you introduce the evidence in court so we can benefit from it. The last is we need to pay attention to pre-election litigation. That is what's going to decide the timetable, who appears on the ballot, and all this sort of internal party factionalism. So that's a really key source that I encourage people to keep their eye on.
Thank you. Kingston.
Well, mine is a wish, and I hope it comes to pass. We still don't have a poster face for electoral malpractice in Nigeria. We haven't seen anybody pay the price.
You want a scapegoat or scapegoats?
Yeah. I think when we have that individual, it becomes a pointer to what can happen to you when you read elections and they feel full of it. And they tell you to your face, if I were not in Osun, Or if I had been in Osun, Adeleke would have lost. And they are getting away with it. So we need to do something with such guys.
Salient point.
Thank you so much. But to say that, I think we need law enforcement to do their jobs. Because in Edo, for example, after we had all the evidence we presented to the public, we also didn't stop there. We went to ICPC with our petition, evidence loaded with too many papers and documentation, and said, these INEC staff are government officials. Therefore, under the ICPC Act, they should be prosecuted for their corrupt practices, which has to do with elections. Till today, ICPC has not called us to adopt our petition, neither have even said, what is this in your petition that you've done? We mounted pressure to say, okay, we want this to be done. What have you done? They have not answered us till today, and this is since 2024. Okay. Right now, my closing remark would just be essentially that we shouldn't undermine the role of technology in our elections. Technology is a lot of gap and takes away an effort. So once people vote and results are uploaded on iRev, and candidates or politicians decide to use iReport INEC, for example, it gives an opportunity for transparency that everybody can see that this is the has come in and this is the getting. And so it's easy for you to then take away the outcome on the going for and all that.
So, Martin, let's go to our panel and your final thought.
Very much, Greg and colleagues. I can only say one thing. I want to limit myself to just one. Citizens go to vote and expect that their votes will count and be counted by the electoral umpire, and we can keep experimenting until we get that right. What people do not expect is that elections will be decided not by their votes, counted or not, but by the pleadings of lawyers and the skills of lawyers in drafting pleadings. If and when we get to the point and remain at the point where elections are not decided by votes counted and properly accounted for, but by the skills of lawyers in drafting pleadings and traversing pleadings, we realize we must realize we have a problem, and we've got to begin to step back from there and find a way of returning to the place where elections are decided by votes counted and accounted for. I yield.
Thank you so much, Professor Odinkalu. The jury was out at the start of the program. Now they've returned and delivered the verdict. Credible elections is only possible when you and I engage. We determine if any actors in front or behind the scenes get to topple our votes. We're the last watchmen and women before and after elections take place. Why you want to book your seat at the table for the ongoing election series, coming up every last Thursday of the month, here only at NewsCentral TV. We're grateful to the presence of our esteemed panelists, both online and in the studio. Thank you so much, every one of you, for your contributions. And we're most thankful to our student audience and to you, our viewers, being part of the conversation from all of our place at the table. This Genga Aborola, moderator, be the change we need. Till next time, bye-bye.
Unnecessary. Giving transmission was unnecessary. The fear in respect of manual recording is the possibility of manipulation, the possibility of alteration, the possibility of falsification, to hijack a result that electronically to a stage now that we should deploy technology beyond accreditation and beyond transmission. I propose the use of blockchain technology. The preparation that secured the credible election for Osun State, INEC now should know that it requires 37 times of such preparation to attain that level of success.
Get ready to dial up entertainment with Take 3.
Catch the latest news and gist, as well as celebrity interviews. Now let's not forget, of course, the exclusive behind-the-scenes access and more.
Take 3 is your one-stop shop for all things entertainment. Now on music, movies, live events, and of course the trending stories.
Delve into the world of entertainment like never before.
In the heart of the oil-rich Niger Delta, the backbone of Nigeria's economy hangs in the balance. Who protects Nigeria's resources? Who stands guard against threats? Welcome to the future of oil and gas securities with Tantita Security Services. Using cutting-edge technology, real-time intelligent, highly trained operators, Tantita Security Services is the shield for Nigeria's vital assets. From our vast coastline to the deepest creeks, offshore platforms to onshore pipelines, and is on the front line, ensuring security, stability, and success. Equipped with state-of-the-art ground, drone, and advanced surveillance technology, Tantita delivers unmatched protection against oil and pipeline vandalism. Tantita Security Services, protecting assets, securing defending Nigeria.
We live in a society where opinions are loud, but understanding is rare. Where conversations move fast, but truth is often left behind.
You are enough. I tell people you're worthy of confidence, you're powerful.
So, we created a place where voices are heard, not rushed, where stories are told and not judged. This is a safe space for honest conversations for real people. From love and family to faith and leadership, culture and purpose, the conversations that shape our lives told by those living them. The Mariah Show. Every voice matters.
From the APC to the PDP. Listen, I'm still paying teachers in Ondo State. It's an existential imbecility, utter nonsense.
Join me, Dapo Adeboye, on Politics HQ, where Nigeria's political heartbeat is felt. Monday to Friday, 8 p.m. on NewsCentral.
In the heart of the oil-rich Niger Delta, the backbone of Nigeria's economy hangs in the balance. Who protects Nigeria's resources? Who stands guard against threats? Welcome to the future of oil and gas security with Tantita Security. Using technology, intelligent and highly trained operators, Tantita Security Services is the shield protecting Nigeria's vital assets. From our vast coastline to the deepest creeks, from offshore platforms to onshore pipelines, Tantita is on the front line,
ensuring security, stability, and success. Equipped with state-of-the-art combat boats, ground-to-air drones, and advanced surveillance technology, Tantita delivers unmatched protection against oil theft and pipeline vandalism. Tantita Security Services, protecting assets, securing investments, defending Nigeria.
As the worldwide